If you are trying to break a pornography addiction, one of the best things you can do, along with one-to-one counseling, is to find a group that you can join. And fortunately, there are a number of great options out there to choose from, depending on what's available in your area, or if you want something that fits with your faith or beliefs or whatever your goals might be for sobriety. So today we're going to look at 6 of the larger groups available so that you can make a choice about what might work best for your situation.
The Marriage Podcast for Smart People is designed to help busy couples like yourselves move away from conflict and unhappiness to build a marriage you'll love today and treasure for a lifetime. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Learn how you can help save marriages, prevent divorces, and keep families intact by going to oyf.support. Once again, that website is oyf.support. And now, here are your hosts, Caleb and Valinda Simone Gandel from Only You Forever.
Welcome to the Marriage Podcast for Smart People. If you want to build a thriving, passionate marriage, you've got the research, the truth, and the answers you're looking for. We have an informative episode for you this week. It's episode number 270. We're going to be talking about 6 porn groups that can help you recover. I think this one might be a little bit less interesting for you, Valinda, because we're just going to be downloading information.
Okay.
But anyways,
before we get started, if you missed last week's episode, we discussed responding to your spouse's rage when you've betrayed him or her. If you're in that situation, especially with a recent discovery or disclosure, that show will be worth going back and checking out. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming shows from us.
And if you're struggling with your marriage, we offer sound research-based advice. And most of all, we offer hope. And if you're in a porn addiction situation, a group can give you a lot of hope because you can meet other people that are further ahead of you in recovery and see that it's possible. Anyways,
okay,
let's go through these groups. I discovered that a lot of these porn and sex addiction groups came into being. I understand that a number of porn and sex addiction groups came into being in the 1970s, probably in response to the sexual revolution. So I guess the revolution had some casualties. Anyways, a lot of these groups have been around for a long time. They're well established. They're not all the same. And we're going to try to articulate those differences as I go through, just just kind of, I would say, pay attention and note what seems to be a good fit for you if you're listening today. And try to pick a couple options, though, because you'll also want to go on their websites and see if one of them has a group or a chapter near you.
Okay.
And in the event that there's none of that, there's also some online options, which is great.
Okay.
So the first group I want to talk about, or first organization to offer groups, is Pure Desire. And there are links to all of these groups on the show notes for this episode at oyf.link/270. So if you go to our webpage, you can get a link to click through. Maybe just remember the name. So Pure Desire, it's called Pure Desire Ministries International. It began in a local church. It was founded by Ted and Diane Roberts, and it began as a program to help people with addictions and codependency. And over 2 decades, they've developed a strategy for working with sex addiction, and so that would include porn addiction. And it's both biblically based and clinically informed, and been quite successful in helping people change. Now, in 2007, it became an independent 501c3, I think is what they call that down there. I think that's the American designation for a charity.
Oh,
and
okay.
Over the years, has expanded to the point where it's past the original church that it's started in. It's well-known internationally. They have groups available in Canada, in the U.S., and in other parts of the world, too.
Okay.
And so just kind of relaying a little bit of their own blurb here. They are Pure Desire is a Christian organization designed to help men, women, and young adults recover from sex addiction and intimacy disorders. They have specific groups for men, for women, for young men, for young women, and for college-age men. So they're very kind of targeted in their gender and age groups, more so than any of the others. The others are more either male or female, or they're not even that at all. They can be co-ed.
Okay.
And we'll talk about a possible issue there too when we get to that. Now, one thing that I think is really strong about the Pure Desire group is that a lot of the professional team behind all of this has been trained through ITAP, the International Institute for Trauma and Addiction, and they're licensed either as certified sex addiction therapists or pastoral sex addiction professionals.
Okay.
Not your group leaders, but sort of the people that are backing this, that are producing the material and resources for the groups.
Okay.
Have that backing. And actually, one of their CSAT is a CSAT supervisor that I used when I was getting my CSAT.
Oh, really?
So I have a little bit of a connection there, and yeah, just some great people in this organization. Now, they offer both local and online groups. The local groups are volunteer-led. The online groups are led by a certified Pure Desire group leader. That's their own internal certification that they've created. So that's not the ITAP qualification.
Right. Okay. They've just trained them.
Yeah. And they have groups both for those who are struggling with addiction and for those who are struggling with the betrayal that comes from these kinds of addictions. So that's good to note. It's difficult actually to see what the program is for the local groups. They don't tell you a lot about what happens inside the group, but their online groups are a 2-hour-long weekly meeting with about 1 or 2 hours of homework a week, and they ask you to commit for 10 months.
Okay.
So I like that. That's a serious, let's go do this thing.
Yep.
Right?
You're going to work.
And that's the kind of hard work you need to do if you're going to beat these kinds of addictions.
Okay.
The local, as far as cost, the local volunteer-led groups are free, but the online groups are led by one of their leaders. And the online groups, there's a paid commitment to that when we recorded this show because we'll be listened to in the future. The group for the online group for addicts was $490 plus the resources that you have to buy some books and stuff. And I think that was around $60.
Okay.
And the group for betrayed spouses was $290 plus the resources. Now, if you go in person, they're mostly held in churches by volunteers, like I said, and they're free.
Okay.
But you do have to buy a few books, like a workbook and another book and some stuff. And I think it's like $60 to get started kind of thing.
Okay.
Groups are very affordable. That's one of the beauties of groups, especially if you can't afford counseling. Now, the founder of Pure Desire, Ted Roberts, was working alongside, as I understand it, Patrick Carnes when he was doing his research on sex addiction. He's kind of the granddaddy of the whole sex addiction field.
Okay.
Grandfather, I guess I should call him. And that was back in the 90s. So Pure Desire, the whole kind of thing is very well grounded clinically as well as biblically. And they have a lot of experience helping people recover from porn and sex addiction. So I just feel like I can recommend them without any qualifications.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second one is Celebrate Recovery. And they have a Canadian website, a US website as well. They have a faith-based 12-step program.
Okay.
And so it has a Christian affiliation. It has a biblical approach to addictions treatment, but more than 70% of their members come from outside the church. So it's not just for Christians. So that might be good because it's not just Christians that struggle with this problem. But it started in Saddleback Church in 1991. John Baker, just apparently this guy, I don't know anything about him, but he felt this real call to start this ministry, wrote a letter to Rick Warren, the senior pastor, who's a well-known name. And he said, yeah, go for it. And so John is still behind a lot of the curriculum and materials for this. And they kind of started locally, and then now I think they have 14 groups in that Saddleback Church originally. And it's really interesting because 43 people came to the first meeting, and now 27,000 have gone through the program locally, like in that Saddleback Church in California. And it's their number one outreach ministry from that church, which is really cool. But you're saying, well, I don't live by the church, right? There are 35,000 churches offering these groups now around the world.
Okay, that's a lot.
That's cool. And over 5 million people have completed their step study program. So it's growing in other places as well, recovery houses, rescue missions, universities, prisons even. Very cool. So they've done a great job of expanding. And also about a third of the people who go through their program struggle with drug or alcohol abuse. So it's not like you have to have only a porn addiction to go see them.
Oh, I see. Yeah. You can have other struggles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So their groups are in person only. If you go to their website, just look for the Find a Group button on their menus to look for one near you. Again, we'll have a short link in the show notes to the group locator. They also have an annual All Together rally, it's called, at Saddleback Church, which is a time of worship, hearing testimonies of recovery, inspiration, and fellowship. You don't have to be in recovery to go there, but all are welcome. Just kind of an interesting, by the way, thing. And they state that their groups are for hurt, pain, or addiction of any kind. They take the 12 steps from AA, from Alcoholics Anonymous, and they add a biblical component to each concept. They also have their own 8 recovery principles that are faith-based that work alongside those 12 steps to help people work towards recovery. So that's just kind of how their thing goes a little bit. And there's no cost for participating in their groups, but there are small fees for resources such as Celebrate Recovery Bibles or Celebrate Recovery Journals or a Celebrate Recovery Participants Guide. So kind of like Pure Desire, there's some stuff that goes along with it.
Yep.
They claim a success rate of nearly 85%.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
Oh, that's their claim.
Well, it just like how do they qualify that is the thing, is because there's a lot of folks who will struggle with these kinds of addictions that'll go to one meeting and then drop out. They're just not ready to do the work yet. Does that, So if you exclude all the people in that sort of initial not ready to change phase, then yeah, you can get these high numbers.
Okay.
So if you're committed, you're very likely to be successful.
Right.
Is what I would say.
Yep.
Yep. But if you're listening and you want this for your spouse and your spouse is not committed, it doesn't mean there's an 85% likelihood that they're going to get sorted out.
If they just go here.
Which is tough. But I just wanted to be kind of forthright about that. It does follow a 12-step program like AA, but again, it's not restricted to addictions. So they don't specialize only in pornography or sex addiction. It's not as targeted as an approach as some of the other groups on our list.
Okay.
So I would say try to find something that's more targeted in your area, like Pure Desire. And if you can't, because this group is so large and widespread and helpful, then go to them.
Okay.
But start with the specialist and then go to the generalist if you can't find the specialist kind of thing is what I'm saying.
But these guys might be more likely to be in your town just because they're much more known or
big. Spread all over the place. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Number 3.
Sexaholics Anonymous.
Is that actually what it's called?
Yeah, it's just a straight adaptation of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
Yep. So AA was founded in 1935. And so from that, there's dozens of other forms of 12-step fellowships, they're called, that have been founded. And they kind of take the same 12 steps. They just adapt them to whatever they're dealing with.
Okay.
So there's I think there's one for spenders.
Oh.
Yeah. And
maybe you should go to that one.
I'm still in denial, actually. Anyway, so one of the adapted versions is SA, Sexaholics Anonymous. And that was founded by a man in the 70s who was struggling with sex addiction. And he created it. It's for men and women, the groups are. So it's a co-ed group who share their experience, their strength, and their hope with one another. This is kind of their pitch now. And the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop lusting and to become sexually sober.
Okay.
Now, in my notes, I have sexually sober in quotes because there are a handful of AA spinoffs that are related to sex or porn addiction or to betrayed spouses even. But the major differentiator, especially for the addiction groups, the sex or porn ones, is around their definition of sexual sobriety. Like, how do you define what it actually means to be sober? Like not acting out.
Oh, okay.
And that becomes a moral differentiator between the groups. So SA's definition of sexual sobriety, let me just go through and then I think this will make sense in a moment, is to have no form of sex with self, no masturbation basically, or however you might pleasure yourself, or with persons other than one's spouse if you're married.
Okay.
If you're not married, it means no sex. As in their sobriety definition, the term spouse refers to your partner in a marriage between a man and a woman.
Okay.
For the unmarried sexaholic, sexual sobriety means freedom from sex of any kind.
Okay.
And for all members, sexual sobriety includes progressive victory over lust as well. Now, we're going to talk about another AA spin-off group in a moment, and they let you define your own sexual sobriety. So if you're not, let's say you're not a Christian or not someone who holds the value of sex is for marriage, and you're in a common law relationship, but you want to be faithful to your common law partner, then
that's your definition of sobriety.
Yep. Or another person might say, who's single, says, for me, sobriety is masturbating once a week because I'm single. It's under control, which, for someone who's like masturbating 2 or 3 times a day and looking at a lot of pornography, that's a huge advance in all fairness, right?
Okay.
So, but if that's where you want to go, if that's your goal, SA is not going to work for you. You need to go to SLAA, the other group, which we'll talk about.
Okay.
So that's why we have to talk about the definition of sobriety part.
Okay.
Makes sense? Okay. Where was I then? So they have no affiliation with any religion or organization. They do have the higher power component from AA, but you can define your higher power. They have in-person conventions at different locations: Sumas, Washington, Atlanta, Georgia, Toronto, Canada. So you can kind of do that part of things if you want to have a convention for encouragement or whatever.
Okay.
They have meetings that are in-person meetings, like small groups that meet in the basement of a church or something, or by email as well, or by phone. And the groups are located throughout the US and Canada, so they're fairly widespread. What they do is very specific to sex addiction and porn addiction.
Okay.
And again, you want to go on the website to find a group near you. There's no cost to become a member of an SA group. It's self-supporting through members' own contributions, like somebody might bring cookies or whatever kind of thing.
Okay.
So the SA program is for both genders, like for men and women. One strength may be it particularly addresses women and the shame many women experience with sex addiction.
Okay.
Because they're a minority, like in the gender balance. There's less women than men.
So there's probably not as many resources.
Yep, which makes you feel worse. Like you're more like, I'm the only freak doing this kind of thing. And so it's good to have that normalization and find other people that are struggling with this too. And so there are a number of women that have given testimonies of having found freedom from sex addiction through SA groups. One concern that I have is that if you are heterosexual, you want to be particularly careful about co-ed groups, especially if there's a possibility that someone else in the group could be the kind of person you would have acted out with.
Just because then it's a temptation.
Yeah. So if there was a sex trade worker, a female sex trade worker, who her trade was because of her sex addiction, and there's a male businessman, and his thing was only with prostitutes, and they're in the same group, being vulnerable, sharing very intimate stuff.
Yeah.
There's a risk factor there, a considerable risk factor.
Yeah.
Now, if the males in the group are porn addicts, and there's a couple other women, so she's not entirely alone, and they've never acted out with prostitutes, there's not near the same risk factor.
Right. Okay. Right? But you won't know that before the group.
No, but you'll go to the group and you'll introduce you. And part of going to any group is feeling like, is this group a good place for me? Is it safe? Can I relate to these people? That kind of thing.
Okay.
Anyways, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that. That's a risk of co-ed groups. And unfortunately, that risk has played out in real life into problems sometimes.
Oh, okay.
But SA has helped many people. It has the benefit of being free. It's a free manual. So if cost is a significant factor in your life, you can still get help in a group like this. There's no study on the effectiveness, and so I can't comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's ineffective. I'm just saying there's no data.
Yeah.
So that's Sexaholics Anonymous. Now, we have a cool supplement to today's show for our much appreciated Patreon supporters. It's actually a scale for measuring pornography addiction. So I thought, you know what? If folks are listening to this, they're probably wondering, like, am I really addicted? Do I have a problem?
Yeah.
Well, this is a proper scale to measure that with. So if you're not sure if you have a problem or not, or if you know you do, but you want to see how severe it is, you'll definitely want to download the PDF on our Patreon page and fill that out. You can score it yourself. And you can get that by becoming a patron of the Marriage Podcast for Smart People. We'll take a short 60-second break here to tell you more about that.
What happens when the fairy tale marriage meets reality? Too often, high expectations lead to disappointment, communication breaks down, and the struggles of day-to-day life become overwhelming, leaving you feeling lost and without hope. Unfortunately, marriage does not come with an instruction manual. Marriage troubles are deeply personal and can take a toll on you, your spouse, and your family. Counseling can be expensive and divorce is very costly. It doesn't have to be this way. Caleb and Valinda understand your pain and frustration. Their mission is to help save as many marriages as possible, and to date, thousands of couples are helped through their weekly podcast. But the most important marriage they want to help save is yours. With a minimum of a $10 investment a month, you gain access to exclusive bonus content and valuable information to help you succeed in your own marriage. Learn more about saving marriages and how you can help at oyf.support. That's oyf.support.
You're listening to the Marriage Podcast for Smart People. Before the break, we were talking about Sexaholics Anonymous. And now let's talk about a sister group, or another fellowship group, I guess. Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous.
Okay.
So SLAA is what we'll call them. It's a program for anyone, men or women, who suffer from an addictive compulsion to engage in or to avoid sex, love, or emotional attachment. So love addiction is a separate thing from sex addiction, related.
Okay.
And if that's more your situation, then SLAA group would probably be a better fit than an SA group.
Gotcha.
It's good to know. They use the 12 steps, the 12 traditions adapted from AA to help individuals recover from these compulsions or addictions. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the differences from the SA groups is that the SLAA groups, each person defines their own sobriety.
Okay.
But they're gathering in order to face and to deal with obsessive or compulsive behaviors. So it's still about facing addiction.
Yeah.
There's no religious or secular affiliation. They welcome people of any sexual orientation or gender identity.
Okay.
There are in-person SLAA groups in Canada and the USA. They also have online groups and an option for phone meetings. And so again, check their website to see if there's a group near you. Online options are available if not. They also have an annual conference. In 2020, it's in Sacramento, California. And their kind of thing is, by giving and receiving support from others who are in a similar situation to yourself in a group, you have a better chance of recovering. And it also gives you a place to learn how to engage with people in a non-addictive way, to be connected without being compulsive. They provide the literature. The SLAA basic text, which it's called, is what it's called. That contains information about discovering the illness, beginning recovery, defining sobriety. The 12 steps of SLA is another document, and there's also personal stories in there of others who have gone from addiction to recovery. They also have pamphlets. So just a lot of resources printed to help out.
Okay.
A lot of it downloadable on their website as well in PDF form. The groups are led by other members. They're not necessarily led by trained professionals. There's no cost for these meetings.
Okay.
So it's a great option in that sense if you have no budget for getting help. And they go beyond just sex and porn addiction to love addiction. So I think that's probably a strength of this group, helping you build healthy relationships in that way. They have that added component if that's a reality. They also have some resources for people with eating disorders, which can be related to relationship issues.
Oh, okay.
So that's a unique flavor as well. And of course, many issues like pornography are related to these bigger problems. So if they're suitable for porn addictions as well.
Okay. I think we're on number 5 now.
Yes. Number 5 is Life Recovery International, LIFE. I actually don't know what that stands for. But anyways, since
Living
2000.
in freedom
Every day. That's right. Good. Since 2000, their ministry has helped countless people experience freedom from sex addiction. They use Dr. Mark Laser's 7 principles to living in freedom every day. Mark was also someone who walked alongside Patrick Carnes in the early days as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And just passed away in the last year.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. But he was a leading authority in the field of sex addiction with over 27 years of recovery experience. So Life Recovery International is a Christ-centered support group ministry whose mission is to encourage, empower, and equip God's people to live every day in integrity. Life provides consistently revised addiction recovery workbook resources. So they're always kind of improving their materials. They have multimedia presentations that they do. They have a support group structure that's available in many places. The groups are in person, but there are also telephone support groups through Life Recovery International. Most of the groups are in the U.S. When I did a quick check on their website, there was only 2 groups in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And their program is for men and for women. And it's a step-by-step program. There's definite goals each month for a year. So it's kind of like you're in this, you're doing homework. You're doing work, probably similar to Pure Desire in that way.
Yeah.
There's no cost for joining a group. It is recommended that members make a $5 donation to the group as an investment in their healing.
You know what? That's interesting because you always say, right?
It's got a pinch a little bit.
Yeah, like you actually have to invest in it.
Yeah. I would imagine there's some resources you can buy too, but I didn't see anything specific about that.
Okay.
There's help for men and women struggling with addiction and for spouses. They also have a couples guide that couples can work through together. And the group or the Life Recovery groups seem to provide the most structure of many of the free groups, particularly compared to other faith-based groups such as the King's Men, which we're going to talk about next. The program offers or includes different tasks to be completed each month. So really kind of stepping through stuff.
Yeah.
And as we said, it was developed by Dr. Laser, who is a specialist in sex addiction. Some of the other faith-based programs, apart from Pure Desire would be in the same camp as these guys. But some of the other Christian groups can tend to emphasize spirituality over like having a clinical basis for the healing pathway or journey that they want to take you on.
Okay.
My bias is towards these guys that have a good clinical foundation along with a good Christian foundation at the same time.
That have both.
Yeah. That's what I prefer. And then we have, again, a broad range of people listening to us. So there's a Catholic option as well. So the ones I've been mentioning are evangelical Christians. And then there's Catholics, a group for Catholics called the King's Men, founded by a guy called Mark Huck. Not sure how to say that. But their goal is to address the issue of a man's role in the body of Christ. They kind of have this sort of real flavor of it's the King's Men. Like it's kind of got a very manhoodly sort of style to it.
Okay.
And they have over 20 years of experience with lecturing, teaching in different places, workshop trainings that they do. They have a variety of options that they offer for conferences or retreats, other speaking engagements. So you can kind of get other stuff from these people besides just going to a group. You can catch a little conference in your area, go to a retreat somewhere, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They speak to men and women and youth on those things. But the groups are in person. They're for men. They're at a variety of locations. Again, check the website to see where they are. They base it on 4 pillars, their program: education.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
You said that they speak to men, women, and youth on a variety of topics, and then you just said that's for men.
Sorry, the conferences are more for different people, like they talk about.
Oh, okay. But the groups themselves are for men only.
Yeah, if you go to their website, their ministry is larger than pornography groups.
Okay.
That's probably where I'm making it a little bit confusing here.
Okay.
I was trying to just sort of extract the porn group part of it.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, so the porn group program has these 4 pillars: education, formation, action, and healing. Sounds interesting. And so they have these weekly formation and accountability meetings called TKM, the King's Men, men's groups. And in their own words, it's been developed and refined by experts in masculine spirituality. The meetings combine prayer, education, an action-oriented component called the 4 C's, so they get you doing stuff. The meetings offer men an opportunity to grow in virtue and accountability using the biblical maxim that iron sharpens iron. And so kind of a lot around masculinity, and also they talk about sexual morality, and pornography as part of that. So real kind of geared towards overall sexual health for men and purity.
Okay.
The website doesn't mention any fee for joining a group. I would say that there's less emphasis on counseling from trained counselors in here, but it is a Catholic-based approach if that is important to you as our listener. It appears to be targeting porn addiction, so if you're in a sex addiction situation, it might not be as good a fit.
Okay.
From what I could see.
Interesting. That's a lot of information you just downloaded.
And I think actually I would say I've heard of all the other groups before we did the research for this episode, but I hadn't heard of the King's Men.
Okay.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. Let's wrap it up.
Okay.
Here,
that is all for today's episode. You can get the full show notes, as we said earlier, at oyf.link/270. We'd like to thank those of you who became patrons between this recording and the previous one. We have Larissa and Corrine and Susanna. So thank you to all of you and all of our regular patrons each month.
Yes.
Next week, Caleb.
We're talking about the key things you need to include in a disclosure when you're confessing infidelity or an addiction to your spouse.
So last time we talked about what not to include.
A couple of times ago. Yep.
Okay.
Like not including blame.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So this is what you need to include.
Yeah. When we did the research, I realized, there's a ton of content here. So we split the what you should do into the next week's one.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that is all for today's episode. Find out how you can help. Go to oyf.support. Thanks. And we'll see you next week.
The Marriage Podcast for Smart People is totally funded by listeners who support Caleb and Valinda in their mission to save marriages. If you would like to be part of this worthy cause, open your web browser to oyf.support. A minimum investment of $10 per month will help restore hope to married couples. Plus, as a patron, you'll gain access to exclusive bonus content and valuable information to help you succeed in your own marriage. Go to the website oyf.support now for more information. Thanks for listening to the Marriage Podcast for Smart People from Only You Forever.